Aye, mates. Today I'm talking with Clarke Ching. We talked about agile before it had a name, and how the opposite of a good idea can also be correct.
I'm Ivanul from Who's Agile. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to my channel. You see a lot of agilists around me on this screen. If you want to hear me interviewing, please click that subscribe button because these are the people that I've invited so far. If you think I'm missing people, let me know in the comments. And that like button, well, if you liked today's interview, don't forget to click it.
Hello everyone, and with me I have Clarke. Is that how I should pronounce your name?
Yep, Clarke, like Superman.
Like Superman. I didn't even think
Yeah,
about that. Wow. But I
yeah.
guess you get that message probably quite a lot. Um,
Yes, yeah.
And I want to show us a little bit on where we are. And I'm actually recording this from Belgium, Ghent in Belgium, and we're moving to, if I'm correct, Nelson, all the way to the other part of the world.
Indeed, that's me there.
And
Yep.
so yeah, that's and that also shows a little bit. Well, for me, like I just said to you, the time is like 10 minutes after midnight or something like that. What's the time on your side?
And the time here, we've just done daylight savings today, and it is 10 past 11 in the morning.
In the morning, and I
So I'm
think
drinking coffee without risk.
and you're it's already Monday morning, right?
Monday morning. Yes, you're Sunday night. Yes,
Exactly.
Monday's
So
Monday's lovely.
I'm calling to the future, basically. That's what I'm
Excellent.
doing.
Yeah.
That's a nice thing. Well, Clarke, before we jump into the questions, could you
Hmm.
tell the people what you want people to know about you? What's a good way to introduce yourself?
Right. I suppose it's probably if I reach across here and grab these. This is probably the easiest way. If I hold them up, I know not everyone will be able to see this. So this is my book, Rolling Rocks Downhill, which has been out about 11 years now. It's a business novel, and it's about agile. I wrote it in a time when agile was considered weird and unusual, and I wrote it for normal people who weren't rabidly enthusiastic about it, to understand that it was just really building in the lean quality and theory constraints ideas into software development. And so it's a business novel. It's a funny thing as a business novel. People actually really enjoy reading it. I spent a long time writing it and growing up as I wrote it. So that it's actually an enjoyable story, and that's one of the things that delights me. I spent 10 years writing it,
Wow.
and I just knew it wasn't. It was technically good enough after probably about 3 years, but I hadn't matured as a writer, so I wrote effectively. This is the fifth version of the book, so that's Rolling Rocks Downhill. But
And
uh, th-
I know I read it in 2016 or something like that, and I
yes, yeah.
really enjoyed it. And then I know that at some point at the company I gave a lot of books away, different ones, and this was one of the popular ones that people really
Ah,
loved, enjoyed reading.
it,
So
it's good. It's really comforting for me that it actually. I wrote a book. I remember I spoke to Tom Gilb.
mhm,
Oh gosh, almost 20 years ago, and he said that his first book that he wrote, which was about Evo. Uh,
mhm.
he wrote it to be an evergreen, and I remember having to look that up, and it's like a book that lasts forever. And I try to write a book like that. The things that were dated in here, that it doesn't mention iPhones all the time. It just mentions mobile phones. And otherwise, that's hung around. The other bit, the bottleneck rules. If people want to get their head around the theory of constraints, the bottleneck stuff. This, I think, is probably my it's probably my most successful book because it's gone beyond the agile world. And I just wrote a really thin, quick and easy read that teaches bottleneck theory and how to put it into practice in the real world. And then more recently, I've written another one here called The Bottleneck Detective, which is almost written like a kid's story. except it's actually really quite advanced theory of constraints, knowledge, and skills in there, but just simplified down so that kids can read it. One of my clients, his 11-year-old, has just read it before he did. But at the same time, it's really very it works really well for grown-ups as well. I wrote it for grown-ups, but I wrote it to be read at the reading age, like of 12 or 15-year-old. Yeah.
Well,
So
the easier
that's
the
me.
language, the more people can understand it. And indeed,
Yeah. Yeah.
I knew about, well, I've read the first one. The second one, I heard about it, but unfortunately I haven't read it. But the Bottleneck Detective, I just discovered while preparing for today. Then I was like, oh, there's actually already 3 books. So I have again
Yeah.
some more books to read on my list. Because, yeah.
Excellent. We'll start with the Bottleneck Detective one. Given your background, either of them, you'll find they are just really. If the skill I have, it's not a natural born talent, but the skill I have acquired over the years is taking complicated things and simplifying them, and that's what I've done in both of those books. I've taken TOC, theory of constraints, and I've done my very best just to make it easy to understand for ordinary people, and I count you as ordinary.
and theory of constraint, just to show also that's of course inspired by this book, of course, I guess.
Indeed, yes.
And at least this book, but he written a lot of other books, and also business novels, which makes them enjoyable to read. And in that sense, I guess also at that level it was an inspiration for you.
Yeah, the goal was, I don't know how many times I've read it over the years. I haven't probably read it for 10 years, but I probably read it the first time in 96. And I just became hooked, and that became my hobby for a long time, until one day I actually, probably I would imagine 3 or 4 years after first reading it, I actually started applying it in the real world, and I turned my book knowledge into from a hobby, I guess, into over the years a profession. So Ellie Goldrat's book, The Goal, I think it's just it's a wonderful book, but it wasn't written. Ellie didn't write it to teach people the theory of constraints. He wrote it to sell some software that was really, really expensive. And he had to convince finance CFOs and people to buy his expensive software. So it was kind of like a filtering process for him. He wrote this book, and then it kind of and it was the idea was that the factory manager would read it and then give it to their CFO and say, hey, we've got to buy this software that does this stuff. But what happened, and for him, probably a really good side effect for the world, maybe not so much for him immediately, is that his software company went broke because people read the book and they kind of untangled it and deciphered it and didn't need to buy his software. But so it's a bit dated now, but it's it's the most influential book in my life for sure.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, and it's, I think, for many people, like it's been already sold so many copies over for more than 40 years. So a lot of
absolutely inspirational,
and inspired your books as well. But let's jump into that very first question. What is something that people usually don't know about you, but has influenced you in who you are?
Oh, that's a really good question. Okay, probably this may be even just for me. I'm a computer scientist by training. That's what I studied. But then I went on, and after studying at university in the early 90s, I got a job writing, or not writing, maintaining old COBOL systems. So I guess the bit that I would say that the very first job that I ever had writing old COBOL code was probably the most agile job I've ever worked in, long before agile came around or even had a name. So that was in the early 90s, and everything we did then, even though it was COBOL and it would take you sometimes 6 weeks to make a tiny change, it built it built him. When I finally discovered Agile, I look back and go, wow. Apart from the fact that most of the people doing Agile are writing in nice new modern languages, uh, the practices that we did in COBOL way back then were just the stuff that really good programmers did when they wanted to write really good code and not create nice new bugs for people to have to fix forever.
And even that with a feedback loop that's much bigger than we have these days. And that's really nice to hear. And it's just not the first time I'm hearing this. And I think it's really good for people to keep hearing it that, okay, agile is also about transparency, is also about showing, making feedback loops smaller. But a lot of the practices can work if you pay attention and if you do
Yeah,
quality right in multiple kind of ways. And so
yeah,
that's
and a lot of the
possible
things
with
that came
COBOL.
out of it were different, and are different now, because the speed of change uh, these days it's much faster. It's just much faster to do stuff, and if it's people might not be able to recognize this idea that when you sat down and made a change and you wanted to see if it actually worked or not, and test things, you had to push submit, go away, read the newspaper, and come back. Oh my God, I feel old. And then come back and look and see if your code would work before you could run it. It would take 20, 30, 40 minutes, sometimes longer. This is not punch card era, but it was maybe 5, 10 years after that. So it built in a lot of discipline. But we've got the same thing. We now build the discipline in slightly different ways.
It's funny that you mentioned the punch card because my father worked in the punch card or with the computers that had punch card. But I
Yep.
remember him telling me that at yeah, I don't know, his first job at university, there were people like they came up with a stack of like 100 cards and it passed without a problem, and there were others that with 5 or 10 cards it already gave problems, and so yeah, you had to if because the feedback loop was then even longer because you gave it to, I don't know, an administrative person that run it, and then the next day or a couple of days later you come and get the results. um, and so if you made a stupid mistake, then basically you lost 3 days and you had to start all over. So you
And
really had
that
to look
was,
into your cards and
yeah,
everything.
and you really would do. I think it was called desk checking,
Hmm.
uh, which was where you would sit down and you would run stuff through and you would simulate it before you would ever do anything like that. So it was, if the essence of the quality movement was build quality and don't test it out, um, of course you need a bit of both. Or it's actually probably, rather than don't test it out, let's say it's don't don't do test, but you don't want to just have lots of rework. But if the essence of it was building quality in, sitting down and making a code change way back then, um, before you ever compiled anything, you had to sit down and build quality in, because the cost of not doing that was really, really expensive.
Hmm. And still, like my father experienced, there were people around him that
Mm,
were not that good as others, and others that were really really good, like I said, like hundreds of cards,
yeah.
and it passed really well because they had a good practice, good
Yep.
attitudes, good, I don't know, good way of spotting at least obvious bugs in the cards and others. And I think that's,
Yeah.
I think it still is today. You sometimes see people just compiling and it doesn't compile and looking for a long time, and others just seeing that. So yeah,
Yeah.
it feels
It's-
it makes me feel old as well. As I wasn't in that area with the punch cards like my father, but having some of these discussions, and even with computers that go much faster, compilers that go much faster, a lot
mm,
of the similar problems stay. And like you say, times have moved so much that feedback is even more important because things are moving so fast these days.
Yeah.
And if you talk about how that influenced you, could you give some examples how that had an impact on you, on the person you are today, or over the
Um,
years?
yeah. Well, actually, probably my reflection would be that I'm nothing like the person I was way back then. I'm 56 now, and when I was 22, I had very, very, very different wiring. Um, and the funny thing is, I probably knew more then. Um, I think it's just or at least I thought I did. And then over the years, of course, I've become stupider and stupider and stupider. But I've got
Or
a
you're
lot
more
better,
aware about your
more,
smartness?
yeah, yeah. You ask my kids, and they say he just keeps getting stupider and stupider. But if you ask my clients, I like to think some of them might think that I'm quite wise now. So it's nice to look back with the benefit of all of that time. But I would say that looking back, in fact, I'm just going to read you a question. Have you had not been doing what you're doing now? Oh, no, different
No,
question.
that was
No,
the
no,
previous.
cool.
We're still
I
at the
was just going to
previous
make
one.
sure I answer. So if I look back then, I would say that the fundamental thing that I would take from that time of my life is that most people really, really, really just want to do a good job.
Hmm.
But I would say that as you move on and move into different jobs, sometimes what's a good job for other people has quite different criteria. So, for instance, a programmer might think a manager is stupid and idiotic. Quite often, I know I did when I was that age. But then as I moved on and did those jobs, I realized that what's important and what's difficult about other people's jobs is sometimes absolutely invisible to other people. And I think that's part of growing up and getting maybe a bit wiser about things, is recognizing that the world is actually a lot more complicated. But if you want to succeed in the world and actually cause change to happen, you kind of have to know how other people are wired and what they're chasing. In Rolling Rocks Downhill, I had the main technical character arrives and he's wearing a t-shirt. He arrives at some meeting somewhere, and I'd love to change the world, but they won't give me the source code. And it was very much a programmer kind of thing. You just had the source code. And I think what I've learned since then is that the source code of how people work is very different to the source code of how computers work.
Well, yeah, I think for a lot of programmers, they're very good, or at least that's the idea that a lot of programmers are good at understanding computers, but maybe
Mm.
not always as good as understanding people or understanding ourselves.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And that's something that most people tend to learn over time, usually the hard way. For me, it was really the hard way, realizing that I was probably the cleverest person in many rooms, but I wasn't always the smartest.
mm. And um, how do you describe that difference between the cleverest and the smartest?
Um, there's a pragmatism that comes with being smart. Hang on. Actually, if I go back, clever is like almost raw intellect. But raw intellect without sort of like pragmatic smarts just means that you can often be really good at arguing, and you can batter people down and win with your logic. And that's how I used to try and get stuff done when I was in my 20s. But it only takes you so far. The really clever people often just come up against a brick wall where they don't have the skills to work with with other people, and they don't realize that they don't have the skills. They just think other people are stupid, or that other people are resisting change, or that other people have ulterior motives. So there's just so much that smart people. Hang on, my screensaver just came on, and I promised you it wouldn't. There we go. And so there's a. So I guess what I'm saying is, smart people tend to know how to not win every argument by not fighting arguments. And it's hard to describe, but I mostly, when I'm saying this, I'm just looking back and I'm just thinking of me kind of growing up. I learned a lot about how to get things done by and creating win-win kind of solutions for everyone by me not winning most of the time. There's a really interesting. This isn't a trick question, but it's a really interesting idea that I think it just makes my head explode. It's so simple, but I'll try and explain it with a question to you. What's the square root of 49? It's not a trick question.
It's not a trick question.
No?
7.
7. And?
Minus 7 then?
Yes, yeah. It's funny. You're like me. The first time I thought of this, it's like, how do numbers work? I've forgotten because I don't have to use numbers. Okay, so it's just interesting. It is late there. The square root of 49 is 7. Obviously, that's the obvious answer. But the exact opposite, -7, is also the answer. So sometimes, and quite often in non-mathematical situations, the opposite of a good idea or of an obvious idea can often actually be just as good or just as correct as the obvious idea. So that's a really weird way of thinking about it.
Yeah, I really like that. It's and I understand that sometimes. Yeah, I've worked with many smart developers that really try to make their point and winning, and I'm not sure you're helping. And I'm not sure if it was on the podcast or someone else, but I had a good discussion with someone also who was who's clearly very high IQ, and he had the same kind of thing that you were saying. Like, he felt like, oh, I can't work because other people are stupid and whatever. And then at some point he joined, I keep forgetting the name, but he joined an organization with only people with extremely high IQ, so all smart people.
Right.
And then he noticed he still had the same problems with people. And then he started to realize, oh, it's not because they're stupid, because actually some of them are smarter than me, but it's because somehow I'm not good at working with people. And so he started to realize, like, oh, okay, so I can also be part of the problem and be part of the solution in that sense and change it.
Yeah.
But
and the reason
him to meet,
he had to realize,
exactly.
Yep. And I did that very, very, very slowly. It took me a long, long time, but I suppose it was in my early 30s. Actually, I'll give you an example. I had just, it was the project that eventually became the fictional project in Rolling Rocks Downhill. And it was called TSP, and it was The Secret Project. That was the real world project name, and there were maybe, I don't know, 200 people working on it. And I, at that stage, was just finishing up doing an MBA, and I did a theory of constraints analysis of big software projects, and it was all based on this one case study. And I did it was basically that MBA dissertation was the work that changed my life forever, because I look and I go, wow, okay, wow, this is, no one knows why these projects don't work, and suddenly I do. I'd taken it all down and analyzed it using the current reality trees and all of that kind of stuff, and I just got all of this clarity from studying it a big project at a systems level, looking at the conflicts that were inherent in it, and I suddenly go, wow, I know this stuff. And suddenly I just felt so much cleverer than everyone else because I could see what was going wrong all around me. And then I finished the dissertation, I submitted it, passed, and all of that good stuff. And shortly afterwards, I went on to start writing the first draft of Rolling Rocks Downhill. But I took it off to my sponsor, who was one of the senior program managers who actually ran the TSP project. And she knew that she was the sponsor. I said, this is the final thing. And then I went to sit down and run through it with her once I had finished. And her first thought when she picked up the thing, she just looked at me with sadness in her eyes. And she said, don't worry, Clarke, I won't tell anyone about this. and that was it. She was just basically
you were
saying,
proud, and she's like basically saying it's not good or something.
Don't worry, we'll just keep it secret. We won't tell anyone. It was like, I won't tell anyone. I won't damage your career. Effectively, just keep this under your hat. Kind of. And then, of course, I happened to be on the right side of history because it was about it tied in with the agile thinking, but it was about management, and it went on. I wrote books. It changed. Thousands and thousands of people read my books and all of that kind of stuff, but she just couldn't see it. And I remember walking away from that just thinking, "Oh wow, I know I'm right." But by being right, I've actually made myself look stupid and wrong. And that was when I had to start learning. That's effectively during that job was when I went off and I started learning how to write, how to influence people, how to negotiate, all of those things that didn't come prepackaged with a computer science degree. I started adding them in so that I could kind of learn how to actually cause change rather than just knowing what the right thing was to do and why the status quo is wrong. I had to figure out how to get people on board with that.
Yeah, I think, and your story brings so much memories, indeed,
I
of
bet.
working with people that don't see it yet, and at the same time, yeah, looking back now, it's easier to understand because the world was so different, and for some
Yes.
people, it was a lot harder. And even today, I would say we're sometimes even going back in that direction. So that, yeah, a lot there. Let's move to that second question where you hinted already a little bit of. If you had not been doing what you've been doing now, what would have become of you? Was there anything where little Clarke maybe was intended to do, or was there something else over the years?
Actually, honestly, I always thought I would be the world's best programmer, and I was. I'm sure at some stage, like we all were. And I remember I met a friend of mine from university a while ago, and she knew the young me, and I really was at university the world's best programmer, one of thousands around the world. But and she said to me, "Why didn't you stick with programming? It would have been you were just so good at that." And that was that would have been the most obvious thing. But I'll tell you what happened one day. I had been stolen from my current programming job, and I've been hired along with I think about 6 others, really, really, really good programmers. And we were being taken to join a new bank that they were relocating, and they were getting rid of a lot of their old staff because there was all sorts of bad karma there. It wasn't working very well. So they hired in the best programmers that they could, decided to pay us a lot of money, and then to teach us mainframe assembler, which is, and we were standing in the queue to go into this mainframe assembler programming course. And they were spending a lot of money on this. And I was at the back of the queue and waiting to go in. I suddenly got a tap on my shoulder, and it was the program manager. And he said, "Hey, Clarke, come this way for a second." And everyone else went in to become an assembler programmer. and I ended up going in the opposite direction, and I ended up becoming accidentally the project manager. And my career it was like a sliding doors moment for people that can remember that movie. If I'd been I like to joke to myself that I'd been fifth rather than sixth in the queue. I might be the world's best assembler programmer now. But that was that moment where everything changed, and I got chucked in the deep end, and I suddenly had to start managing stuff. And rather than thinking in terms of code, I had to think in terms of time, and what other people thought much more.
And
So the short answer is I'd still be a programmer.
Yeah, but that's why it's interesting to have these
Yeah.
kind of conversations and to think in different kind
Who
of
knows? It's an
and
interesting
indeed,
question.
who knows where we are, and yeah, it's and like you say, you felt yourself really good as a good programmer at that moment, but somehow, well, the universe had other ideas for you, and here you are, already published
did.
3 books, and yeah.
It's just the randomness of life, isn't it? You just don't quite know. You know, there are a lot of people that are doing. You would know Mary and Tom Poppendick, for instance. There's another turning point when I was working in the TSP project, which I mentioned before. I managed to get them in, persuade the CIO to get them in to come in and teach this stuff to them. But by the time they got there, I'd left that company because clearly I wasn't wanted, and we met in Edinburgh when all this was going on. But the reason I'm mentioning them is not to do with me. It's just that their careers have been totally different, and then they stumbled on something in their late 50s, I think, maybe even early 60s. I'm not quite sure when, but Mary's career was effectively wrapped up working as and she sat down and she wrote a book, and her whole world changed so late in life, and she couldn't have predicted that that the book would have been successful, because most books aren't.
She basically was kind of retired, or like, okay,
Yeah.
finished the career, and like, okay, let's write what I've learned or write some ideas, and all of a sudden, boom, the whole
Bang.
world gets to know
Totally
them,
different world.
and that's a whole different kind of
Yeah. They could have just ended up being grandma and grandpa with their kids and grandkids, just semi-retired, having a nice life. I said they ended up riding bicycles around the world, going to conferences, and you just don't know. Life's wonderful like that.
And I really like that you bring that, because I have a 23-year-old, and I do still remember just before he went to university that I had some trouble deciding, and it's like, this is the most important decision I will ever make, and everything in my life depends on it. And in a way, yes, it's true, it is an important decision, but like you say, life
It's not really, is it?
Yeah, exactly. There's so many other things that will change, and that can still influence you in all kind of directions where you can go. So yeah, that's for me is one of the reasons why I'm asking this question, because we sometimes have something that we think we want to do, and somehow things happen, and then things go in a different way.
And it can be quite wonderful.
Go ahead.
Cool.
And yeah, exactly. It's that's the wonderful things of life. Let's talk about your biggest challenge, at least the biggest challenge you want to share openly on the internet.
Right. Okay, that's an interesting one. So my biggest challenge now. Yeah, I'll do now. My biggest challenge now is that I'm sick of agile. It's funny. That's not quite it. I'm just going to see what comes out, because I have got a clear answer here, because I keep being tormented by this. I think my biggest challenge for me is that for so many years I've associated myself. I've been in, working with agile people. I was, but I haven't worked directly with agile teams for 6 or 7 years. And even then, I didn't work with the teams. I've worked with management and leaders. And yet in my brain, it's still anchored to thinking kind of almost like, I could sit down and write code if I wanted to, or I could sit down and work with teams, but I don't anymore. And everything I've done is always, for the last 20 years, 20 plus years now, has been around agile. It's been around agile. And I kind of feel that I no longer want to directly serve agile teams because I just don't work with them. But who I work with is their bosses and their leaders. And I'm trying to help those people do the stuff that all of the agile teams would just really hope that they would do. But they don't have the skills to cause that. Things like teams want a project sponsor or a customer or whatever word you want to use for a product leader, whatever works. They want a person that's dedicated and not a bottleneck to the team and gives them timely answers and all that kind of stuff. And over the years, I remember so many teams getting stuck with that. But I now work with the people who can fix that. I work with the leaders, and I help them de-bottleneck the leaders, for example. So there's just so many things that really well-functioning agile teams can't fix. They need to be fixed at the organizational level. And that's who I work with. But I guess my biggest challenge is that I still keep I don't want to say, I figured it out, Eve. I figured it out. The easiest way is a lot of stuff that I say that will offend agile people. And I don't want to offend agile people. And that's probably my biggest challenge. And yet the stuff I say, actually, I think is much better for agile teams once they understand it. But I got a lot of old school and probably management and leadership and commercial lenses that people who work in the teams don't. And when I do my work, it makes it better for the teams. But if they hear, for instance, that I say, hey, sometimes projects are really, really, really good. For instance, estimates are great if you know how to do them in a nice way. All of these things, it can provoke almost not a backlash, but amongst a lot of agile people, they find my message offensive. Their bosses don't know.
That's the thing that I wanted to say. I understand. I understand. I think a little bit both parties in a way that estimations, they can bring us a lot of different things, but at the same time, if you're a manager, if you're a person that a business depends, you kind of want to know, okay, how long will things take? If I'm rebuilding my house, I'm also going to ask the people who are helping out, how much money will it cost me? And in that sense, that's a similar way. So we need to find ways.
And both sides, but both sides are actually really important. But when we think of sides, we think like of sides in a civil war, say, or sides in a war, or sides on a football game, and yet we're all actually on the same side. And so,
exactly.
But I sometimes when you say stuff that sounds pro management, pro making money, pro commerce, pro delivering expensive stuff on time, it can cause, it can trigger is a good word. It can trigger almost innate anger at from people who don't understand that. They've taken a side to say, for instance, that doing projects is bad. And if you've taken that side, it's very hard to see the value in projects. So most of my work, almost all of my work, is actually getting over that conflict. But it's my biggest challenge. It's probably internal to me, is that I really want to serve both audiences. And serve both communities, because I think they're all on the same side. but it's really, really hard sometimes because they can, because yeah, you know, there are reasons why people don't go on Twitter and all of those places just for having angry arguments. So I'm just, my biggest challenge is that I don't want to say stuff that is actually good without explaining it in a way that makes it good for everyone.
Well, yeah, and I think in this world we're a lot easier polarized, and Twitter doesn't always help because
Yes,
if you
polarized is a good word.
yeah, so sometimes you say one thing and you know, like, okay, a tweet is like what used to be 140 characters or something like that, and you know that you will have to have multiple statements before people can understand it, but already after the first or the second thing they become angry, and we get a lot of the discussions in there. So yeah, like you say,
Totally.
it's yeah, I can see that. Now the second part of that question was like,
Yes.
why is that a good thing for you, that
Ah,
challenge?
gosh, these are clever questions, actually.
Thank you.
Actually, what I like about these is you've asked good questions. I read through them, but I'm having to make up my answers. That they're not, you know, I'm having to figure them out as I go along. So, if I just on there, so why is it a good thing for you? Well, it's really, really, really interesting to have a challenge like that. One of the books I didn't show that I've written, I think I've written 5 books, but I've got another one called Corkscrew Solutions, which is actually about resolving conflicts when you have two sides. Sometimes that's in your own head, but it's the evaporating cloud of people who are familiar with the theory of constraints. And I've taken that same thing and simplified it down. So I live in my mantra really is when you've got two solutions or two sides, try and get the best out of both. So it's the best of both worlds, and that's the message of it. That's the way of working. So it's a lovely challenge to have because this means it's really, really meaty and fruitful. And when you have two sides, it means that you've got so if you've got technical people who are busy working on stuff and they're building really good products, and they, for instance, let's say you've got someone, there's a really anti-management vibe. The overhead and waste that comes out of having two sides when they're actually on the same side is massive. So it means there's massive opportunities, and all it, not to say all it really requires. It requires sitting down and having some nice grown-up conversations about what each side wants and how they can get the best out of both worlds. Sometimes keeping in mind that the square root of 49 is 7 and -7. And when you sit down, you often find that there's actually not. It's easy to overcome the conflict between them, and when you do, a lot of waste gets eliminated, and a lot of opportunity and value gets created.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit about the position that a couples therapist has to take, because
Yes,
they don't want
yeah,
to agree with one side or the other. They basically want to support both sides until that they start listening to each other, basically, kind of, in a way.
that's it. That's exactly it. Trying to serve both of those without recognizing that there's good, and there's usually a lot more in common in both sides. But people tend to focus on the differences, and then just problem solving around the differences.
And that's all in this book, if I'm correct.
That's the one. Problem
Right.
solving with a twist. And if you think,
So
I'm bottlenecks. So corkscrew
ah,
is what you use
right.
to remove the
The
cork,
bottle, the cork, which is a
which is
bottleneck.
stuck in the bottleneck. There you go. Yeah,
Oh, that's really thought through. I didn't make that link yet, but okay, I just discovered the book now. So
excellent.
let's. But it's definitely, I love the idea, because indeed, as if you're any kind of coach, and if you're well, actually working with teenagers or with students, it's the same
Mm,
thing. That there's a lot of discussions, and actually, for a lot of things, we are on the same side, but we don't always feel like being on the same side. So that's
yeah,
a really interesting thing to see there. So that's
exactly.
yeah, I really like that analogy.
It's actually genuinely life-changing when you start thinking of how we're on the same side. How do we get the best of both worlds? It just absolutely changes the world, because you come up with win-win solutions that usually those solutions never get found, because someone's going, it's -7, the other one's going, it's +7, and they're busy arguing, and they spend all their time arguing rather than sitting down going, oh wow, we're both right. And then when they stop arguing, all of that waste disappears, and then they get these sparks and delight of working together and solving problems. And it's just it does change your world. And I must say, for everyone who's watching this, learn how to make win-win solutions for people, and you will end up getting paid a lot more as well.
That's also good.
It's always a good thing.
And everybody wins, so it's actually
everyone
win,
wins.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
That's a really good thing. And
Cool.
and that I feel a lot of passion. I feel a lot of drive, like with many people here on the show. Do you have any idea where that drive, where that passion is coming from? Was that already in you, for example, as a young adult, or that first programmer that you talked about? Was there already that drive there, or?
I was going to say that I think I did say earlier that I think actually almost everyone wants to do a good job, and I think that's just what drives a lot of people. But then I also realise that, like you, and I imagine everyone that's listening to this, we are all wired to want to keep doing a good job and doing a better job. And I think about a lot of my school friends, that they all want to do a good job, but they are actually wired differently. A lot of them, just quite happy to go home and not have difficulty. I don't know. I don't know what drives any of us. I just know that we all get pleasure. So some of us get. Hang on, I'm going to quote my hero Ellie Goldratt. He said that people that are interested in the theory of constraints, and other people, of course, but he said that people interested in the theory of constraints, for some reason, we all seem to be driven to smashing our heads against brick walls. It's like some people take the easy way with everything, and then some of us like to take the hard way. And it's just the challenge of doing that. But I couldn't define it further than that.
The challenges, but I immediately also then think the value that it brings, because it's bumping them to that wall, but eventually when you, like you say, okay, you can convince two people to listen to each other and to see the other side.
Yeah.
In many cases, maybe not always, but in many cases it brings value. It's not just the hard work, but it also brings some value, or not.
Yeah, and well, when you're clever, and you also are smart. If you think that, go back to what I said earlier, when you're clever, you've got that raw intellect, but you've also got maybe the commercial and people smarts. You can, when you go and work on hard problems, you do change the world. You do make other people's lives better. If that's how you want to succeed, if you want to go and make the other people's lives better, you can do that, and you can actually it can. It's nice. Like you have fans. I have fans. It's nice to know that when you share this stuff, you actually get that positive feedback, and you actually feel like you've made a difference. Well, one of my clients in Australia, earlier this year, she was awarded the Australian Businesswoman in Tech. Businesswoman of the Year award, which was obviously very prestigious. And she's just an amazing story, amazing what she's done. But I helped her grow from having 25-ish people to having about 350, 400 people over a 3 or 4 year period. And so her life has changed, but so are 300 or 400 other people. That company is thriving because the area that she worked in has just been so successful. And like, I can take a tiny little bit of credit for doing that. And when her and I talk, she'll give me more credit than I deserve, and I'll give her more credit, which she does deserve. But it's just really nice to know that you can actually make a difference.
And so when I look back at my question, what drives you? What I'm kind of hearing is changing the world and having an effect on people, having a positive effect on people. Is that?
Yeah, actually, that's really good. But I suspect almost everyone would say some. I don't know, but I think
Well,
if there's
that's
actually
why you have
selfish
to
thing,
listen to the 200 other people I've
I
talked to.
do. What I'll do is I'll get the transcripts of all of them, and I'll put them in AI, and I'll go through and okay, what's the overall? And it'll say, everyone wants to do a good job and make a difference.
Yeah, that I probably should create an agent or something like that to give me some of these answers. Because
No, it's
at
good. It's
this
very
moment
interesting.
it still is.
You're putting me on the spot in the nicest possible way because I'm having to, I'm having to try and, as I read through these, it's there's no easy answer for the questions you're asking. So yeah,
Well,
carry on.
if
They're
it would
good.
have been easy answers, then probably would be less interesting to listen to as well.
That's true.
And that's why I like and I was kind of lucky to come up with these set of stories.
Yeah,
Second question.
you've done a good job.
Still happy about that. Let's move to that next one about. Well, you talked already about some achievement, but what do you consider your biggest achievement that you had so far? And maybe the question that I've typically asked before is that because basically this is your moment to brag and to be really proud. Is that easy for you, Clarke, to brag and to be proud about some of your achievements?
It's funny because the other day, someone asked me, "How did you learn how to be good at selling and self-promotion?" And they were asking for some advice, and it's funny because it's not easy, and I have actually had to learn how to talk about myself and what I've done and promote it. And it's really not easy. And I know some cultures find that much easier, but where I grew up, you don't show off. But when you actually help people, like as a consultant, you have to be able to speak confidently and share stuff that you've done with people. So it's been a skill that I have learned reluctantly, and I think the key driver for it is that makes it is that when it's ick, when you sound like a politician or a salesperson. You go, that's not me, but there are many ways of positively talking about yourself and what you've done that actually aren't icky and aren't horrible. But do you notice I just mentioned my former client there? I don't know if it came through, but I feel really uncomfortable. I don't want anyone to think that I've taken any credit, even though I clearly contributed significantly. It feels really to talk about that. And in fact, to answer your direct questions, biggest achievement, I honestly think that the work I did with her and her team, debottlenecking her as a leader, was the thing I'm most proud of. Partly, and I'm so glad she got that award, because it was just, she really, really earned that and deserved it. And it was just, she's got such a good story. But it's one of those things that it's actually hard to talk about because I contributed, but so did hundreds of she's got 400 people working for her roughly, and they all contributed. but I would say actually genuinely the proudest moment I have been is when she won that award, and she pinged me. We had this. We both cried on WhatsApp when she won it, and I feel a bit awkward talking
But
about it
yeah,
now.
but I understand it also in a sense that when you talk about your drive of changing people's life, this is a big example of changing someone's life. Even like you say, you maybe even if you did just a small little thing and that then skyrocketed into something else where a lot more other people contributed, it's still something that you gave a little push or you showed some person a possibility, and all of a sudden it's not just a small possibility, but it's also somebody that took the plunge and then went into it, and
Yeah.
that had a huge impact. So yeah, it's
And it's actually really interesting how that many years ago, based on my personal experience, I came up with I called it Clarke's rule, um, and I remember blogging about it, and of course it's gone in the distance, but it stuck with me, which is kind of like. Is it Peter's principle? It's the opposite of Peter's principle. Peter's principle, I think, if I've remembered the right name, is that most people rise to their level of incompetence.
mhm.
And it was talking about managers. You get promoted up until you get out of your depth. Um, I think that there's a bit of truth in that, but in my experience, Clarke's rule is that most people never get to rise to their level of competence. It's the exact opposite. So if I think of my client, Angela, who I was talking about, and many others that I work with, there's so many people who've kind of been trapped. In fact, I use the analogy of hermit crabs as my growth model for people is based on hermit crabs, how they live in a shell and then they keep growing and growing. They have to move to the next shell. But so many people get stuck in a shell that's too tight for them and they get trapped there. And then the tighter it gets, the harder it is to look
To get
out and go,
out.
oh, there's a shell over there and I have to move to it. But then I've got to sacrifice all these things that I've got in my current shell. And when I get there, I'll have to do new stuff. And it's and for a hermit crab, they actually have to go naked uh, in the wild ocean as they move from one shell to the next. So that's kind of Clarke's hermit crab rule, which is that most people get trapped below their level of competence.
And it can be true at the same time as the Peter principle, because you might be trapped in a role in a certain company and
Yes.
move to another company, or have someone like you, a coach or a friend that can help people out and to give them a little push, like, yeah, this
Yeah.
is this is
And
your
sometimes you don't even
bottleneck,
need a
but
bigger shell. Yeah, you just need a shell on a friendlier beach that isn't
oh,
so tidal. Or sometimes, as you get older, you move to in the real world. You move often. Like our kids are about the same age as our eldest is also 23. And when the kids leave home, sometimes you move to a different shell, and it could be a smaller shell, it could be a nicer shell, it could be, yeah. But it's just we've got to keep. I think the lesson is, in fact, if you go back to if you're talking about drive, and I was trying to say earlier, I don't know if everyone's motivated the same way people like us are. Some people need to move from different shell to different shell. Most crabs, I think, just have the one shell. And that's it. And most people, I think, are just happy to, go in and just plod along in the happiest way they can, uh, not have lots of change, not have lots of challenge, and they're absolutely happy with that. But there's some of us who are hermit crabs, and we need to move from shell to shell, and that's how we actually we make a difference.
I really like that. I really like that. Indeed, that's where we can grow and indeed help others or help ourselves. Or yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
And like you say, not everybody is the same. And I think Yeah, something that I've said a lot is that for me, a lot of coaches, our comfort zone is getting out of our comfort zone. And for a lot
Yes,
of people, that's very scary. And
it
of
is.
course, if we don't realize that it's scary for other people, we might be pushing people out of their comfort zone when they're not ready, and then you get a lot of
Yeah,
other things. But
and
luckily, from time to
it's a good
time,
one.
we have some people like you just your story showed that there is a person that you kind of help to move on to that next shell.
Yeah, and everyone's different. And I would say of all of the, I'm sure that everyone who's listening to this is similarly wired to us, and that we're really good at looking at things with fresh eyes and coming up with quite practical solutions that other people haven't thought of. And not everyone can do that, but when you're helping people, like I debottleneck people, and people think of it as a capacity thing, but more than anything, it's it is people are often trapped with their own thoughts more than anything else. But so often they're also so busy they don't actually have time to sit down with someone who can help them look at their life with fresh eyes, and just go, oh, I just need to make this one tweak, and that will get better. And then maybe a week later we make another tweak and it gets better, and then another tweak and it gets better, and you got this. And then eventually they end up moving shells, get a promotion or move to a different company or retire, and there's just so many things. But often people are so busy they don't actually have time to stop and think, what shell would I like to go to next? And if I take the shell thing, most people, there's the A, B, and C shell I think of. And C shell will be a play on words, but the A shell is where you're at the moment, and a lot of us ambitious people often look at the C shell, which is where they want to go to, but the way to get there is to step via the B
A
shell.
and B.
Just take that smaller step and get to the next one. And I found that really, a friend of mine, Andrew Ireland, who I used to work with many years ago in Scotland, told me that was his strategy, and it always looking forward. What's the C shell? But get there via the B shell, and that way you don't get out of your depth and drown as you do it.
Yeah, yeah, and like you say, especially if you're running naked on that
Yes,
B in that C, for that, yeah, that you need to go to the small, well, not the smallest, the next shell closer to you, and then go
yes,
to the next one, right?
yeah, and then
And
you
you
grow
also
into
get
that
in,
shell.
and you also
Yeah.
get into the habit of changing, because that's the other part, is that okay, you're better.
Yes, yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, I like that.
That's, let's move to that next question. Do you have a personal agility tip to share?
uh, can I swear? It won't be the worst
Yeah.
swear in the world. Okay, avoid assholes.
Hmm.
I was on I'm not sure, was it another podcast? I'm on a really big podcast in a couple of weeks. I can't say anything about it until it comes out. But I think it was on this that I had this realization, that in my work, like I don't work, when I'm working with people, they're in like corporate environments, and someone said to me, "How do you?" What was it? It was, "How do you help people deal with difficult people?" And I talked a lot of stuff, and then the guy said, "No, how do you actually do it? How do you sit down and do it?" And I had this. I go. I had this moment where I suddenly felt like a little bit of a fraud. I said, "Well, I don't need to do that. I don't actually have difficult conversations with people in a minute. Every conversation I have is like, it's really nice and productive." And I go, and that's not a skill. Um, and it slowly dawned on me that I have structured my life that I don't take clients who are assholes. If you forgive my language, I
But
have selected
s-
people I want to work with and can help.
you you select the people you want to work with, and I think many of us do. But sometimes these people come with other people who are not that nice. How do you deal with them then, or how does that work for
Ah,
you?
and I guess I'm fortunate in the stuff that I do. That I'm usually able. I'm just thinking all the time. I'm able now with the way I work and what I do to deflect them to people who can work with them.
Hmm.
I'm thinking there's one company where they were quite happy to pay me quite a lot of money, but with some clients, I have we chat. I try to pre-filter very much, but if I'm kind of not entirely sure of whether I can help them or not, and sometimes it might be that I just can't help them. But you have I have kind of like hey, we have 1 or 2 sessions, and at the end of it, we both agree whether I should send an invoice or not. And if not, we just go, hey, that was a fun couple of hours. We chatted together, and then we walk away. And I remember the first time I did that, I just had this funny feeling that I just couldn't help the guy. And he was actually he wasn't an asshole. I just hated the business he was in, made me want to vomit. And we had 2 chats, and I just decided that I couldn't work with him. And I'm not normally judgmental, but
And it's not about the person, but this is about the environment he was working in,
yeah.
and somehow that made you feel uncomfortable and said, okay, this is not where I want to work, and that's
And
okay.
I'm just going, I can't, and I just knew I couldn't help. So I would just say, hey, look, I don't really, but at the end of those 2 sessions, I knew what he needed to do. And I recommended what he do, which was, well, it doesn't matter what it was, but he had to hire someone else rather than me. And I recommended what that person should do. And it just works so much better. So I don't want to claim that I have any great genius here. It's just that I realize that I don't have that many difficult, unpleasant conversations
Hmm.
because I have managed to filter out the people that I don't want to work with. But it's different for the people that I work with because I have to help coach them how to work with those difficult people, and sometimes it can just be really hard. You know the Alien movie.
Mm-hmm.
There's a really good lesson in the Alien movie, which is that whatever you do, don't bring an alien with acid blood uh, into your spaceship. And it's the same at work. Don't bring new staff, with acid in their blood into your workplace because they will destroy your entire workplace. You need to avoid those people. Um, and I guess that's, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I recognize that, and yeah, I was not that fortunate to never work with these people, but I do think that I have a tendency to feel about some of these,
Yep.
and then we can have these kind of conversations, and sometimes people don't listen and they say, yeah, but for other reasons we want to keep working with that. Okay, maybe then I'm not the right person to help you because
Yeah.
okay, then and it could be that I see things where there was no problem. That could also be the
Well,
case, but then I'm still
that's
not
also
the right
true.
person.
And you just go, yeah. And we don't have to fight every battle.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's good. It's part of the joys of again getting older and maybe wiser. That we don't
and
have
and
to
and
fix
choosing
every
your
problem.
battles and it's exactly, but because there should be problems for other people as to solve as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Exactly.
let's move to that
Cool.
next question. What have you learned about remote working? Because a lot of us we jumped into remote, or we were forced to jump into remote working
Hmm.
a couple of years ago. Well, first of all, maybe did you do some? When did you start working remote? Did you?
So I decided to start working remotely about 4 months before COVID hit.
Wow,
And then everyone
as
around
a
the world,
genius
I
idea
was
or?
it was a deliberate personal choice. I decided to live here where I live, where unless I wanted to go pick fruit in the summer, I would have to work remotely or travel. And I realized that I had been traveling for a little bit, and if I just realized it was killing me, and I mean that almost literally. Actually, no, I mean it literally. And I decided not to travel, and I decided I would figure out how to help people by working remotely. And that was almost like a special thing, because it just meant that people had to be open-minded enough to go sit down and go, actually, it's coaching and mentoring, or it's consulting disguised as coaching and mentoring. And we can do that on a screen. And in fact, if I can do that in my evening from home, in the safety of my home, and Clarke and I can talk together. So I had some people in Europe at that stage, or we can do it during the day, and I can do it. And it was just actually a better option for some people. But then everyone copied me. And it took away what I thought was actually a special feature of me. But it actually, in a way, made it much, much easier, because everyone just goes, oh, it's easy now. The technology's caught up. Everything is just so much easier. So the thing I know not everyone has the luxury of just working from home all the time, or quite often I will actually go for a drive and phone clients, and we'll talk through stuff that way. And quite often they'll go for a walk, say in Sydney, and I'll go for a bike ride here, and we'll actually have good conversations. But I think that because this is my preferred way of working and my only way of working, we've gotten really, really, really good at having much better interactions over Zoom and Teams than if they were face to face. And it's not a technology thing. It's just having good conversations, building trust with each other. There's a rhythm that we use, which is that every week or every fortnight, whenever we catch up, or however we package things, we catch up, and we always focus on, we talk about stuff, we wander around, and then we figure out what's the one thing that we need to focus on. And almost the moment we figure out what the one thing is that we need to focus on this week or this month, we almost instantly know what the solutions are, because we've wandered around. So there's something about talking face to face over screens, which is in a way far more intimate and trust-based than being in a room with someone. I don't know why or how, but it just feels safer and easier. And that could, Eve, perhaps be just the way I'm wired. But I know a lot of people have had the same experience, that actually working over screens is superior for one-to-one coaching stuff. So my tip would be embrace it when it's a really good thing. And if it's not a good thing, sometimes go into the office. So like, I've got a new client. I'm going to fly, visit them. Luckily, they're near the airport. I'll fly to their airport. We'll pop out. I'll spend a couple of days just having a chat with them, getting to know them, and then I'll fly back. And we will probably never meet face to face again. Angela, the lady who I work with for the who got the business award, she and I don't think have ever met face to face. It's amazing. Yeah, it's better in some cases. Embrace it. That would be my tip.
It's interesting, because on the podcast we have people who've been in both directions. So some people say very similar to what you, is like way better, have advantages. Others like, no, it will never work. And it's really, again, like you say, personal choice. For some people it will work. And I think a lot has also to do indeed with the technology, that indeed has changed so much more. I do remember my first teams that I was doing remote back in 2005, in the beginning of Skype. But like, Yes, it was possible to talk to each other. Yes, you could see each other, but not in the same way
It
we see
wasn't
each
good.
other today.
Look at
And
us.
yeah.
We're sitting here. I feel like I've known you for years. But part of that is your wiring and your personality and your demeanor, that makes it easy to talk to you. Not everyone's got that. But then at the same time, if we were meeting face to face, I'd probably feel a lot more physically uncomfortable. Whereas I can sit back in my chair here. You can't tell that I was just patting a dog on the nose here. And she sniffed me inappropriately. And we don't do that in the office. So yeah, sorry, I
Yeah,
overtalked you.
no, but I feel that there's other people who said here like, okay, I've been shuffling cards below the desk because that's what I need to stay in the
Yes.
conversation. Other
Yep.
people are scribbling, and I've seen this also with me, that at the conference I did a workshop, and I was looking. I didn't bring my typical hourglass. I like to work with hourglasses, and I couldn't
Right.
bring them because of going on a plane. Because I had already too much other stuff, so I used my
Right.
phone to keep track of time. And then people were complaining about, oh, he was on his phone. It's like I was literally checking the time, and it's very tempting to be on the phone and others. But during workshop, I pay very much attention. But
Yeah,
people
that's
just
good.
look at that, and yeah, and here I might be doing other stuff. I'm
Yes.
taking notes. I'm so it might it but it's less visible. If I would be taking notes during this conversation in the office, it might, where we're sitting together, it might feel much more uncomfortable.
Yeah. It's fun.
So yeah.
But one of the ways, there's almost a way we need to signal that just because I'm on my screen doesn't mean that I'm looking at Twitter or whatever people do these days. But I know people used to complain. I remember you'd read things about, I went on holiday and there was a family. You see this pop up every so often. There's a family sitting there at the breakfast table in the hotel, and they were all on their phones, not talking to each other. How can they? And yet, that family, the mum might be doing Wordle. The dad might be just checking in quickly on an email. The kid might be one of the kids might be checking in some little social networky thing that they have going on, and the other one might just be sitting there, been feeling really tired from having slept in a hotel, and having a look at and watching a little Netflix kids thing, and they might be the happiest little family in the world. Or you might just be looking at them going, they don't like each other. Who knows? They may have actually all got up at 5 o'clock in the morning and gone for a family run earlier, and they're just recovering. It's one of the curses of people quite happily judge the devices, don't they?
Yeah, I would say like, if you're an introvert back when I was growing up,
Yep.
basically we'll be reading books and not talking to other people.
Yes.
And now I see a lot of the young introverts actually being on some way in social media and
And
interaction.
they're chatting,
Yeah,
aren't they? They have
they're
these
chatting,
amazing lives that we don't know about. Yeah.
and that's what we don't always see. And they might actually be chatting to each other and sending jokes or whatever, so they might have
Yep.
another way of interacting. And yeah, so sometimes it's easier to have some kind of interactions with my children in a chat box than face to face, because there's that kind of
Yeah.
age where talking to your parents are never cool and that kind of thing.
Oh,
And so yeah, that sometimes a lot of things are others. So really,
totally.
really, I really like that way of looking at it. It's just different, and before, if people didn't want to talk to each other, they could just read a newspaper or a book, or watching television, and yeah, still
Yes.
not being talking to each other. At least now they're talking maybe to other people, or even interacting
Do you remember in U2, the band, the
Mhm.
Irish rock band?
Yeah.
What's his name? Bono.
Mhm.
Was it Mark Houston? He used to wear those tinted glasses. He wear tinted glasses, and I remember it brought out in me this oh god, just what a I won't say, but I judged him for being a big showy offy rock star wearing tinted glasses inside. And then many years later, I learned that he wore tinted glasses because he actually had really bad, I think, glaucoma. So
Yeah, because
he
of all
had,
the cameras and people taking so much
yeah,
pictures of him, like this
and
is
so he
his
had
way
to
of
protect his
protecting
eyes.
himself.
And he had turned it into a way that kind of looked like a rock star thing. And he didn't tell everyone, "Hey, look, he's just got really bad eyes." But it was so easy to judge, and I felt bad when I heard that. Um, and then I
It's
thought,
again
"Oh,
the both parts might be right, yeah. and
yes,
and yeah, I do remember I was a fan before come on, before Zeropa came out,
right,
where he started to playing around with that character, and
yes,
but I very quickly understood that he disliked how he was seen before, and he wanted to play around and be again much more in a much more different way, but making fun of it in a way that, how would I say, how is that the movie that made fun of Rockstar? Yeah, I can't come up with
oh,
the name. The
it's a Zula. I know the
the
one you mean.
Yeah, and so but he's trying to make fun of it and laugh with his stardom in a way.
Yes,
But if you don't know that, then it really looks really ridiculous. It's like, what the hell are you doing?
yeah.
But try, yeah, finding
But a
ways.
lot of us do that. We put on we turn on a show, Boom. And that's our persona. And sometimes the persona is needed for so that we appeal to other people. Sometimes it's just a way of going into an alter ego where we can actually perform and then retreat back to our introverted
Oh
self.
yeah, and I
Us
think
introverts are
in
really cool.
many ways we need, well, and I think that's a little bit what rock stars might do, is pick different kind of personas maybe for songs.
Mm,
David Bowie did a lot of that in different
yes,
albums in different kind of ways, and so that's, yeah, that is indeed a way how people might do it. And the only thing that is strange is for a lot of us is that we might be playing one persona, but we might not realize that rock stars might have multiple personas. And
they,
actually, movie stars, that's all they do.
that's
They
what they
play
do. Actually, very good point. Yeah, they do. They
so
turn
yeah.
on it, but they actually literally perform in the most blatant way. But other people, yeah, we all do that, don't we? It's a
Well,
survival thing.
and I still think that sometimes artists, I mean, movie stars, when they're so famous for a certain role, people only look at them in a
Yes,
certain way. I mean, yeah, that people might think about Johnny Depp only as the pirate, and
yes,
not thinking as, and are thinking that that's how he is in his world, but maybe he's completely
yeah,
different. I have no idea because I don't know the guy. But
exactly.
yeah, that's that's a little bit how people look sometimes at certain characters. And
Yes,
like you say, it could be just glaucoma and a reason for being in a
yeah.
certain way. So that's let's move to that next question. What's a book that you want to talk about? And well, of course, we already talked a little bit
Right.
about your books, but the goal is now
Cool.
to talk about another book, a book that you want to bring here.
There's two books. I'm not going to say much about each of them, and they're both quite old. Well, they're both about 20 years old now. But they massively changed my life. And neither of them were about the theory of constraints or agile. The first one was Made to Stick by Chip and Dan
That's
Heath.
this book, right?
Yes, that's the one. Best book. How did you do that so quick? um,
Because you sent me this name up front. This
did
book I
I?
know. I did. The next one I
Excellent.
don't know. So
The next one, I'll
I'll
see how
see how
quick you are with
quickly
this
I
one.
can go.
And the second one is called
Wait.
Crucial.
But why do
Oh,
you want this one?
Made to Stick. For me, it was when I decided. I mentioned earlier, working on this thing, I knew I got agile. I could explain why it worked. I could do all of these things, and I realized that I just couldn't get my message across. Made to Stick is one of the books that helped me do that, because it just helps you think about your message, whatever that might be, and just simplifying it. And it's one of the most wonderful books to read. I just loved reading it, and I've tried to write like the two brothers wrote, and I actually have a galley copy that they sent me before it got published through some miracle of the internet. It's just one of the best books I've ever read, and I just enjoy it. And if people like audiobooks, it's one of the few audiobooks that's actually really pleasant to listen to. The narrator is brilliant, and the way the book is written, it's just little stories that are just easy to follow through. It's honestly, it's a work of art.
Yeah, and I happen to have listened to the book and not have read the book, but that's a nice coincidence. I wanted to say I didn't read it.
Listened.
I listened. Well, actually, afterwards I did read it because I liked it so much. But it was I started listening to it.
That's good.
So,
Cool. Do you want to know the second one?
Yes, the second one.
The second one is from a guy called Rory Sutherland, who you may well have seen on YouTube and stuff. He's a couple of years older than me. He is the vice chairman at Ogilvy in the UK, which is a big advertising agency, and he runs their behavioral science, behavioral economics division there. And he is the funniest, wittiest, cleverest person I think I've met. If I have two heroes in my professional life, Rory is one of them, and the other one is, of course, Ellie Goldratt. But what I like about Ellie was really like the physics professor who learned how to be persuasive to the left-brained, geekier part of the world. So almost everyone almost everyone, not everyone, but everyone who's gravitated to the theory of constraints has got a really geeky kind of, nerdy kind of left-brain, logical kind of way of looking at the world. Rory has just started a podcast called Bottleneck Podcast, and he knows Goldratt's stuff, but Rory has kind of just about knows everything, and his whole angle is about perception. Actually, his whole angle is about perception and value.
And what's the book then?
The book is called Alchemy.
And
if you think about that,
this one, because indeed it's not the first time that people bring it on. But yeah, I haven't read it. This is one I haven't read, but I'm really. So why should I read it?
For me, I think my brain over the years has been going. I know left brain and right brain isn't scientifically accurate, but just pretend it is. Left brain computer scientist to author who wrote business novel. That's me. Ellie Goldratt kind of did the same thing, and he did it much more successfully than I did. But when I wrote about the business novel, I learned a lot about empathy and about people. And then more recently, as I've picked up Rory's stuff, especially the stuff that's in his book, it's helped me realize that just so much of life is actually about perception and words and how you say it and what you say. So it's really kind of bridged that world between the right brain and the left brain. And I cannot just do it justice. As people, if people read it, they'll notice that I stole the idea that two opposites can be a good thing. They can both be good ideas. That's one of his principles in that book. It's also a principle from Ellie Goldrat's stuff in the Corkscrew Solutions book. That's the negative 7 and positive 7 sort of thinking. But there's just so much in there that just kind of like slaps you on the head. And you go, what? And then it slaps you this way. And you go, no, it's just silly. But it's a beautiful book. The only difficulty I would have with it is that when you've read it, you feel a bit discombobulated. Whereas if Made to Stick was just it really stuck in your head because they had simplified it so much. Rory's it's a book that's really easy to read, but you kind of to consolidate and get it stuck in your head requires a lot more work. It really does feel like you've been bopped around the head a bit, and you go, what's going on in there? Something's different. Whereas Made to Stick was a lot more just direct and easier to interpret. But I like my brain now more after it's been bopped on the head by reading Rory's book more than I liked it before. I think it's made me that's it. It's all about, in fact, what he calls it is psychological, where psycho doesn't mean like psycho crazy. It means to do with the mind versus just logical. So it's all about the psychology of stuff and how logic, when you actually know how the brain works, is different to logic when you only know how logic works. It might be the difference between my clever and smart.
You really make me think about indeed psychological, that there is the word logic in it, because indeed it doesn't always feel logical.
I know, isn't it amazing?
Wonderful. That's really wonderful.
2 days ago, I discovered that listen and silent are anagrams of each other, and I go, oh, I'm glad you said that, because I said to my daughter, I said, did you know? Wow, this is amazing. Silent and listen are anagrams of each other. And she goes, duh. Yeah, well, she didn't do it quite so viciously. Duh. I knew that when I was 9. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Psychological. I never realized logical was in there until I read Rory's book either. So we're in good company.
Okay, let's move to that. For me, a very interesting question is like, what's a question do you think I should also ask you, and what's the answer?
Oh, that is a really sneaky question. What question do you think I should also ask, and what is the answer? Okay, I'm going to have to make up something and then make it sound like I've thought really hard about this. What question do you think I should also ask, and what is the answer? Okay, so I'm going to put on my commercial hat now, and I'm going to try and disguise me promoting myself. So I'm thinking out loud here. How do I get a question where the answer is me saying how amazing I am in a way that's also humble? Maybe that's a question. Maybe that's a question that many of us who perhaps come from the clever world and then have reached out and have become a bit smart, like I've talked about, and commercially smart. It's just the recurring thing I have for myself and others. How do you promote yourself and sell your work without coming across as being icky or greedy or selfish? And I think that's probably that I've been asked that quite a few times, because it's been a real journey that I've gone on. God, I sound like a consultant, don't I? It's been a real journey I've gone on. It is figuring out how to take all of the stuff that I've learned and then effectively sell and market it myself. And I would say that the answer depends on who you are and how you work. But for me, it's been very, very clear about how valuable I actually am and in what situations I'm valuable. So obviously, if I try and do stuff where if I said, oh, I'm going to go pick apples here, lovely place to pick apples, I could do that. I'm not going to earn very much money because they're going to be people who are much faster at picking apples than I am. And it's a skill that's very easy for people to do. So I've had to figure out, and this is like a really good life lesson for everyone, is what am I actually really, really, really good at that other people aren't good at, but it's also valuable. So like the thing that I'm good at now, but I never was when I was in my 20s or 30s or 40s, maybe the first half of my 40s, was talking with people who leaders, executives, CEOs, and I'm actually really comfortable with that now. But I'm very valuable to them because when I was learning agile all those years ago, they didn't need to know about stand-ups and things, but they do need to know about debottlenecking their leaders. They do need to know about how to deliver projects on time to really aggressive dates. Those are the things they care about, and that's where I work. But I've had to go through and I've had to figure out where is it that I'm actually really, really, really valuable to other people. And then the hardest bit of that, going right back almost to where we started, is when we talked about the challenge, is realizing that my primary audience, the people I mostly serve, are now the people who run businesses rather than the people where I've come from, which run teams. So there was a whole lot of words came out. I hope some of them made sense there, but it's kind of like how do technically clever people figure out how to sell themselves in a way where they're comfortable with it? And the answer is figure out how you're valuable to other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's well, it's wonderful. Like you ask yourself, was it valuable? And you make at the end even a small wrap up of both the question and
Yes.
the answer. So that's even more wonderful.
Oh, cool.
But that's really that's this is why I like this question so much, because it goes in all kind of directions, and many people come up with then things like this, which is like, okay, it goes back a little bit to that earlier question that I said, like, okay, is it easy for you to be proud of yourself? And how do you, if you want to sell yourself, you have to also be proud
It's the same
of
thing.
being able to, it's very similar. And indeed, like you say, that value, thinking about the value that you bring, both for yourself and for other people, it's really important. That helps you, because if people see that value, like, there's kind of an automatic sell, I would say, or at least if it's something that they value as well. So that
all of us want to do two things at once, or maybe not all of us, but most of us want to fit in and stand out at the same time. And it's just that's the crux of it.
That's the thing. So really wonderful answer. So let's move to already that last question. Who do you think I should ask next? Who's the person that you think I should bring in?
Right, I am going to recommend that you ask my friend Russell Healy.
And if
Russell,
I'm correct, that's Russell?
That's him. Oh my goodness, yes, but he probably has slightly more grey hair than that picture. Yep.
Yeah, that's the picture. I think I took it from LinkedIn.
Yes.
It's always a risk because I didn't show the picture in the pre talk, and there is always a risk that I make a mistake, because in this case I don't know.
It is the same one.
I don't know him yet. So why should I invite him?
Right. So Russell is one of the cleverest, most thoughtful. He's clever and smart. He's clever and smart, if I take those two things. And kind, one of the nicest people I have ever worked with. And for your wider audience, they may not have heard of him, but he created the Get Kanban board game that lots and lots of people played pre-COVID. and he actually made a pretty good business out of that. And then COVID, of course, came along and stopped people buying board games that they had to play together and learn from. But he's one of the most interesting, thoughtful, clever people, and he's just really good at getting stuff done. I think he would be a very interesting choice. Him and I are good mates, but we're quite different.
And in a way different. Could you say some more about that?
Okay, yeah. So actually, I suppose it might be. Maybe the difference could be that when I moved back to New Zealand, he and I met up and we started working together. And I'm just trying to think. Maybe the difference. There was a difference in that he had a best-selling agile board game, which was really weird. But it, sold hundreds of copies every year. It was used all around the world. But he had a low public profile, which he liked. But in a way, here in New Zealand, he was a superstar in the agile Kanban world. But most people didn't know him. And I was kind of like the same when I moved back. I was very well known around Europe. But when I came back, I had sold thousands and thousands of books about agile and lean. So I was kind of a little bit vaguely superstarish. But him and I together were probably the most internationally famous agile lean people back then. But how we were different is that I wrote a novel which required so much like learning about characters. There's more than plot. And Russell wrote a game. And can you see there's a lot of creativity in both of them, but the skills to create a board game are very different to the skills. So there's a lot more emotional stuff in mine. There's a lot more detail and different types of cleverness and smartness in those.
Right. I get that. And it's
You'd enjoy talking to him.
It's I hope so. And indeed, I did know the name, but I know the Get Kanban the game. So that's is already interesting to do. Now, really, Clarke, I really want to thank you for your time because it's been
Very
a
welcome.
wonderful full moment. Now, before we jump off, if people want to reach out to you, what would be good ways to reach out to you?
Right. Probably the easiest way is to go on LinkedIn.
And that should be the LinkedIn, if I'm correct.
That's it. Yep. And there's only one. Well, there's two Clarke Chings in the world. The other one is a distant relative whose ancestors, rather than coming to New Zealand in the 1900s, went to Canada, and he's a dentist. So I'm the nice Clarke Ching. He's a dentist. So it's easy to distinguish us. Clarke Ching on LinkedIn.
So that's a different profession, I would say. Really wonderful time to share and to talk with the future, I would say. I've learned a lot of things. It was really interesting. Gave me a lot of energy. Like we said before, I didn't need any coffee to stay
better than
awake.
Coffee.
Way better than coffee. So I really want to thank you for your time. And
well, thank you very much.
Either I'm going. It's been New Zealand is one of the countries I do hope to visit once. Or if you're coming to Europe, I do hope that we can see each other again. So, really.
I haven't been to Europe for a long time because of COVID kind of got in the way. But I am due to come back at some stage. And I just say, lovely interview format. You've clearly polished this a lot over a long time. It was very nice to be interviewed by you. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching Who's Agile, where the stories of agilists come to life. I hope you liked today's interview. Subscribe if you're not subscribed and want to get to know other agilists.